Here outside of this abandoned school building in Alexander, Kansas. Wind farms, miles of nothingness, towns of 20 people, towns of 0 people. That's Rush County. Oh, there's also the town that's obsessed with barbed wire. We'll get into all of that and more throughout this video.
For our next story, we head over to Rush County, Kansas, where the population has declined to a point that the county has never seen. 2,800 people still wandering around this land, hoping and praying for a better day. But sadly, it doesn't appear that this better day will come. Such is life on the Great Plains, where the cattle roam freely, the farmers who own land are quite happy, and the people are nice. Otherwise, it seems that everyone else can't wait to leave.
Here at a lonely-looking rest stop on Highway 96 right outside of Alexander, Kansas. And here's this marker right here. It says Fort Hays, Fort Dodge Trail. Not much else here. This trail was a short path between Fort Hays and Fort Dodge. It passed through what was to become the city of Alexander. Rush County is about a 16-hour drive or so southwest from Detroit, Michigan, or about 1,037 miles. Maybe Wichita would be a better reference point. While I was at this rest area, I saw that they had a travel brochure inside, so I picked one up, and this is what it read. At least you couldn't say that they don't have a sense of humor. Actually, this is quite accurate. Nothing in most directions and nothing much here anymore. Once a pioneer stop, now just a stop sign. Proof that death comes for towns too. Population, whoever didn't get out in time. Where tumbleweeds pay the taxes. Gotta respect the self-deprecating humor. Before we get too deep into things, here's the population history for the county. The population peaked in 1930 at just over 9,000, and today, the population is at its lowest point ever. With the county spanning 718 square miles, that works out to less than 4 people per square mile. Yeah, there's more people in a group text than there are within the average square mile out here, so if you get lost, it might be time to panic because nobody's going to come out here and find you. We'll start things off in Alexander.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, most people haven't. Today the town is home to only 54 people, but it's actually the oldest community in Rush County. It began as a fur trading post that was built by Mr. Fink along the north bank of Walnut Creek. The post served as a refuge for cavalry, freighters, traders, and other travelers along the Fort Hays, Fort Dodge Trail. A stockade was even built around the trading post.
I would build a great wall, and nobody builds walls better than me, believe me.
To protect it from outlaws and raids from Indians. In 1872, the post was purchased by Alexander Harvey, who the town is named after. 2 years later, in 1874, the first post office was established.
You've got mail.
Harvey himself served as the first postmaster. This all happened when mail still arrived by stagecoach, since the railroads hadn't reached Alexander yet. You know, just cutting 1870s technology right there. Well, shortly after all of that, they built a log schoolhouse, and in true small-town Kansas fashion, it was used not only as a school but also as a church, a community center, and a public meeting space. Translation: 1 building, 3 arguments a week.
I think the new school building should go over there.
I think it should be over here.
Well, I'm not going to agree with you because my idea is better.
Well, I think you're wrong. I think my idea is better.
You know what I think? I think you're all stupid. Now, which one of you is gonna go make me a sandwich?
We have very stupid people, and we have leaders that don't know what they're doing.
Well, I have no idea what arguments sounded like back in the 1870s. Way before my time. Way before your time too, but what do you think arguments sounded like back then? Let me know down in the comments. As time went on, Harvey had enough of it here.
Goodbye.
Yeah. He eventually sold his store and left town to pursue teaching and farming. In 1886, the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad came through, but it was built south of Walnut Creek, so naturally, the entire community picked up and moved south to be closer to the tracks. The railroad gave Alexander its first connection to the outside world. though the outside world didn't seem that interested. By 1900, Alexander was thriving. It had a bank, 2 creameries, multiple stores, a telegraph office, and several churches. By 1910, the population had grown to 150 people. Then, in 1916, a big red brick school building was built. Here outside of this abandoned school building in Alexander, Kansas, and there's actually 2 dates printed on this building. There's 1930, right there in the middle, and then up high, there's 1916. Yeah, this is the old school building in Alexander, Kansas. The school closed in 1966 after unification, so for over half of the time that it's been standing, it's been empty. The structure still somehow looks better than the rest of the town to this day, as it towers over what's left of Alexander. Fast forward to 2015, when NJR Clean Energy Ventures completed the Alexander wind farm at a cost of $83 million.
Billions and billions of dollars.
No, not billions, just millions. Thanks anyway. The farm has 21 turbines producing 48.3 megawatts, which is enough to power 17,000 homes per year, or about 200 times the population of Alexander. Under a 20-year deal, half of the power goes to Kansas City, Kansas, not Kansas City, Missouri, but Kansas City, Kansas, and Yahoo's headquarters actually grabs the rest under a 15-year agreement.
It's a massive plant, one of the biggest in the world.
Man, who would have thought that teeny-tiny Alexander, Kansas would be the town that helps keep the lights on at a massive .com corporation in Silicon Valley? Bet you didn't have that one on your bucket list for this video. Alexander's population peaked at 202 in 1930, and after that, the long, slow decline began. The post office somehow still runs today, but most of the town is empty, and the abandoned buildings that you see here are the ghosts of a much busier past. Before we move on to our next town, make sure to head on down below and find the subscribe button, hit it, and like this video. Also, I'm curious, when's the last time that you used Yahoo as a search engine or for anything else? You know, it's a massive company, but is it really? I mean, I haven't had to use it in a long time. I think the last time I did was for a fantasy football league, which was like 10 years ago or something. So let me know in the comments. Feel free to comment about that or literally anything else about this video, or you could tell me that this video sucks. That works too. On the opposite side of the county along K96 is the city of Timken.
Welcome.
Just like with Alexander, Timken sits on the south bank of Walnut Creek. Timken today is home to just 38 people. How it still functions as a city? I don't know. Well, technically I do know because Kansas has weird rules about how cities can disincorporate, but also I don't know. You know, it's confusing. Apparently Kansas loves filing paperwork more than implementing common sense. Well, unlike with Alexander, the post office in Timken has been long gone.
Goodbye.
It closed for good in 1996, right around the time that Yahoo was still relevant. Coincidence? Probably. Timken was founded in 1886 when the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad was built west of Great Bend. The land was owned by a guy named Henry H. Timken, a man who made a fortune and speculated in lands among future railroad sites, including the 4,800-acre site that was eventually to become a city that was named after himself. In fact, he wouldn't sell his land to the railroad company unless they agreed to name the town after him.
Do you know who I am?
No.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Really?
People know me.
What a douche. Oh, you want to buy my land and add a stop along the Railroad West? Okay, great. But only if you agree to name it after me. It's like, why build a legacy when you can just demand one? I'll have to try this next time I sell something. Which, by the way, reminds me. Some people sell their land, some people sell their dignity through YouTube channel memberships. That's right. If you haven't already, you can become a member of Team Invader. The link is down below. You can take it a step further by joining Team Invader Plus, where I'll have a monthly live Q&A on the first Saturday where you can talk to me and I can talk to you and we can be friends.
I like you. Do you like me?
Or if that's not your thing, you can always just watch the videos and hit like and drop a comment down below. Either way, I appreciate you all the same. Unlike that Timken guy, but sorry, got a little bit carried away there. So, the city was built in 1887 by the railroad. What I mean by that is that the depot was built, but none of the lots were sold. That's right, even back then, nobody wanted prime railroad front real estate in Timken. The surrounding rural area, however, had a decent population of farmers, so a post office got built here anyway in 1888. A decade later, a merchant purchased the majority of the town sites and opened a general store to serve the immigrant settlers of the area. These settlers were primarily from Czechoslovakia, Bohemia, and Moravia. Apparently, the travel brochure promised opportunity, not tumbleweeds. We don't know what this guy's name is, but apparently we do know that he worked with the railroad company to put together a marketing campaign that offered discounted fares for potential settlers to head west and to see the land for themselves. If they were to purchase a parcel of land, the money that was spent on their train ticket was applied towards the purchase of the land. Sounds like the 1900s version of free shipping. The idea worked, but not all that well. By 1904, a community hall and Catholic church were built, followed by a lumber company the next year. By 1910, the population was 50, so 12 more people than today's Timken. Hey, growth is growth, right? Sometimes you gotta take what you can get. By 1913, Timken had a mill, several stores, a bank, and a grain elevator, which it still has. In 1930, Timken gained city status. The population grew to be 170 by 1940, but it's been downhill ever since. So what happened to the train depot? Well, it was abandoned in the 1970s. Rush County purchased the building shortly after and moved it to La Crosse, in which the building now serves as the Rush County Historical Museum because nothing says preserving history like moving it to another town. Speaking of places that still exist, let's head down K96 to Rush Center. This is Rush Center.
Never heard of it.
What was built in the geographic center of Rush County originally, Rush Center was supposed to be the county seat. Spoiler alert, it's not. Just like with the prior two towns, Rush Center also lies along the banks of Walnut Creek, because back in the day, if you didn't build next to water, you were flat out stupid. That being said, the first name of the place was Walnut City. I tried, but I couldn't find a historic map that had the original name. Rush County has always been no man's land, even for the prideful cartographers of the past. I mean, this 1873 map doesn't even bother to label anything inside the county except for the almighty Walnut Creek, even though Alexander was an established community at the time. Anyway, yes, Rush Center was supposed to be the county seat for Rush County. The first post office was established in 1874.
You've got mail.
From that point on, both Walnut City and Alexander were growing pretty quickly throughout the rest of the 19th century. The first church was established in 1874, while the first grocery store was opened the same year, which meant that people could finally stop hunting for squirrels for dinner. I call that progress. Also in 1874, Rush County became officially organized, with the name deriving from Captain Alexander Rush of the 2nd Kansas Colored Infantry, who was killed in Arkansas during the Civil War. Walnut City became the first county seat, and shortly after the name changed to Rush Center. It didn't take long for a small community to form with homes, businesses, schools, churches, and shops, but then in 1876, the county was resurveyed and, surprise, the geographic center was now actually 4.5 miles north from Rush Center, right where the present-day La Crosse sits. So, Rush Center had some competition for the county seat with La Crosse. And that didn't sit well with the good old folks of Rush Center there. Over the next decade, they fought in court for the right to remain as the county seat. They felt wronged, betrayed, and stripped of their identity, but in the end, La Crosse got the courthouse in 1888, and Rush Center just kinda sulked about it for the next 130 years. Fast forward to today, and you can still feel the heartbreak, like the whole town collectively went through a bad breakup and never dated anyone again. I mean, look around. According to the website Legends of Kansas, Rush Center once had as many as 1,500 people back in 1878. That's a lot for a town that now has only 140. Apparently, losing the county seat was like yanking the plug on Rush Center's momentum. At the turn of the century, the place had a bank, a weekly newspaper, a mill, and several retail stores. By 1910, though, the population had already dropped to 250, and it's been trickling down ever since. Kind of like an IV drip, except the patient's been mostly dead for 100 years. But hey, Rush Center still has one thing going for it, the 2-mile-long St. Patrick's Day Parade. Yeah. Every year they haul a makeshift courthouse on a wagon back to Rush Center in a symbolic "We Still Matter" victory lap, and honestly, respect. 100% respect. But who knows how much longer that'll last, because you kind of need people for a parade, right? And both Rush Center and Rush County are losing more residents every year, and the median age is quite a bit up there. We'll get to that later. And, you know, the older you are, how many more times do you want to spend all of that energy putting that together without any young people's help? You know? So I wonder. But if you think Rush Center feels dull and empty, just wait until you see the next place. Welcome to Nekoma.
Welcome.
Let me ask you, do you feel welcomed? Well, if so, you shouldn't, because there's nobody here to welcome you. That's right, nobody lives here anymore. The town's population, 0. Well, these days Nekoma is down to a lonely grain elevator and a few abandoned buildings. One looks like some kind of store from back in the day, maybe the post office or something like that, and past that there's a couple houses. The town was first settled by someone named John W. Felch.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, me either. That was back in 1871. Nekoma was officially platted by the Santa Fe Railroad Townsite Company in 1884, and the railroad arrived 3 years later. That's when things started picking up. They built a train depot, they built some stockyards, the post office opened in 1890, followed by a general store in 1893, and by 1910, Nekoma was thriving, relatively speaking. There were 3 grain elevators, a hardware store, a lumber yard, a barber shop, and even a restaurant. The population hit a whopping 75 people, which for Kansas standards, that was basically the Roman Empire. Then in 1916, the Nekoma State Bank opened, and there was even an opera house, a school, 2 churches. Yeah, that's right, you heard me, there was an opera house here. Shortly after, the population peaked at 100. The 2-room schoolhouse stuck around through the mid-1950s, and more impressively, the Nekoma State Bank somehow operated in a tiny wood frame building until 1986. Today, the bank still exists, but it's in La Crosse. Seems like everything that dies in this county just gets reincarnated over there. In fact, La Crosse even rescued the original Nekoma State Bank building in 2003 after it sat abandoned here for 15 years. So the first building that you see here, this was the Miller General Store. The right side doubled as a post office. No plans to move this one to La Crosse yet. Maybe they should, though. They could build a little prairie village frozen in time. People might actually come to see that. They're already halfway there, why not? Well, amazingly, Google Street View went through here in 2008. That is incredibly amazing because back in 2008, Google Street View really only hit up the major cities. They didn't really get off of the main highways, but they actually went through the street that makes up what's left of Nekoma. And here you can see the crumbling foundation of something that was still here. The house to the left, I believe, is the second abandoned building that I showed you when I came through this street. Well, the post office in Nekoma closed in 2008, and today it's hard to believe that this was once a town with an opera house. I mean, when you think opera house, at least when I think it, I think of a culturally rich city. But yeah, well, today the loudest sound that you'll hear in Nekoma is the wind asking why you stopped your car. That being said, let's keep moving. This is McCracken.
Never heard of it.
What's crack-a-lackin'? McCracken is crackin', yo. No, literally, McCracken is crackin', and not in the cool way. The sidewalks, the roads, maybe even the dreams, all a little bit cracked. McCracken saw a peak population of 594 in 1930, but today, we're down to 152, which means there's more tumbleweeds than people. Maybe. Today it's the last stop along a branch of the Kansas and Oklahoma Railroad, and I mean, literally, the tracks just stop here in McCracken. Originally it was the Missouri Pacific Railroad that ran through here, and it headed much further west. It was a part of a big plan to connect St. Louis to California during the Gold Rush era. In 1887, the town saw its first post office.
You've got mail.
Along with a bank, 2 grocery stores, a newspaper called the McCracken Enterprise, a drugstore, and a theater. Back then, McCracken was poppin'. Well, for Kansas standards anyway. But then came the fires, 2 of them. One in 1905 and another in 1909, both of which gutted parts of downtown. Still, McCracken rebuilt each time. One of the more impressive structures in town is the St. Mary's Catholic Church, which was completed in 1926. Around this time, McCracken briefly profited from a nearby shale quarry, but that boom didn't last long. When the Missouri Pacific Railroad eventually removed McCracken as a stop, that's when they say the decline started. And by they say, I mean everyone says it, but let's be honest, McCracken was just one of hundreds of Kansas Plains towns watching the population drain out like bad plumbing around the same time. Regular services stopped being held at St. Mary's Church in 1997, but a few locals still band together to keep the building in good shape, which, considering the town size, basically that means one guy with a ladder and a lot of free Saturdays. Oh, and apparently a Hollywood film called Paper Moon was filmed in and around McCracken. And listen, having once lived in a Kansas town with a similar claim, I can confidently say that locals will casually bring it up in every single conversation until the end of time. Otherwise, most of the buildings that you see here that are still standing were built in the early 1920s, and judging by how they look today, let's just say that nobody's exactly lining up to film a sequel here. Alright, well, if you really want to see more of McCracken, make sure to check out my second video, which will be uploaded on my second channel, and the link will be down below. It will be on my channel called Chris Hardin's Video Archives. You can check out that channel and subscribe to it so that you don't miss the notification when the second video becomes available. In that video, I will show all of the footage that I filmed while driving through Rush County, and that way you can get a better glimpse of what more of these towns look like and more of the countryside. That being said, we're going to head on to the next town. This is Liebenthal.
Welcome.
This little Soviet/German gem of a town isn't what it used to be, but hey, compared to some of the other towns we've seen, this place is basically Vegas. Okay, maybe not, but it's one of the oldest towns within about a 50-mile radius. Not quite as old as Alexander, but close. Back in 1875, the Tsar of Russia decided to ruin everybody's day by issuing a decree saying that the German colonists have lost their 100 years of special privileges and now had to fulfill the same duties and military obligations as everyone else. So naturally, a bunch of them said, yeah, hard pass, packed up, jumped aboard a steamship, and after 3 weeks they landed in Baltimore, Maryland, because, of course, nothing screams Kansas pioneer like a surprise layover in Baltimore. There were as many as 14 families, about 60 people total, who made their way from Baltimore to Kansas, and ta-da! Liebenthal was founded on February 22nd, 1876. Surprise, the name comes from a place of the same name in Russia. In German, Liebenthal actually means Love Valley. Immediately after the settlement was founded, the first sod houses were built. By 1878, construction on a Catholic church was completed, and by 1900, Liebenthal had a school, a general store, a post office, and around 500 people living here. Despite the obvious population decline, a few places actually remain open in town today. Well, now from one of the oldest towns in the area to one with a population that's small enough to fit in the back of your car. This is Loretto.
Never heard of it.
Forgive me, but I don't have much for this one. Google Maps calls it Loretta, but it's actually Loretto. That's how important this place is. Even Google couldn't be bothered to get it right. Actually, from what I've found out, most maps actually say Loretta, but this building in town says Loretto. Odd. Loretto was founded by the same group of settlers that founded Liebenthal. About 60 families lived here in 1916, but the community never had a post office. It did have a school, though, but unfortunately agricultural failures derailed the town, as it did many Kansas towns, and people started to leave. The school closed in 1968 and the church stopped regular services in 1997. At this point, it's basically God saying, yeah, I'm out too. You'll want to buckle up for the next one because, well, actually don't. Nothing's happening there. You'll be fine. This is Otis.
Welcome.
Founded by, surprise, a railroad investor, and it was named after his son. Some of the streets in town were named after some of the other founders' kids too. Nepotism, man. But make it frontier chic. In 1887, a train depot and post office opened, shortly followed by a school and several businesses. And just like the prior two towns, Otis was originally populated by settlers who came from Russia. Even with only 300 people today, Otis is like Paris compared to many of the other towns in this county. Baguettes sold out? Try the co-op. Natural gas was discovered here in 1928, and production took off. There was once as many as 50 oil and gas wells, helping the town grow to 505 by 1920. More wells than neighbors, which is one way to do community building, I guess. By 1943, a helium plant southeast of town was constructed by the U.S. government to extract helium from natural gas. They even built a separate little company town for workers. You know, a pop-up subdivision before pop-up subdivisions were cool. It didn't last long, though. The government closed it after World War II, but then reactivated it in 1951. You know, this is the Kansas version of It's Complicated, because it closed again in 1968. After that, it was sold off. Today, there are no remains of that community or the original plant. However, in 1962, a new plant was constructed west of town, and it became the first liquid helium plant in the world. It's still in operation today, bulkier than day one after doubling in size. Today, the facility is considered to be the second largest of its kind.
It's a massive plant, one of the biggest in the world.
And it's operated by the Linde Group. Because, you know, nothing says Kansas like a German industrial gas giant, right? They claim to be the largest supplier of helium in the world, keeping balloons and MRI machines equally happy. Despite having all of that to be proud of, the town's population has continued to decline, just not nearly as dramatically as some of its neighbors. Small town, big lift. Time to deflate your expectations for the next town, though. This is Bison.
Never heard of it.
Where there are no such mammals like there used to be. The first school popped up about a decade before the railroad, 1877 to be exact.
You've got
A
mail.
church followed in 1878. The place was first called Buffalo, but that was already taken in Kansas, so they flipped open the thesaurus and landed on Bison. Once the railroad came through, the company drew up the streets and the town grid was born. A post office opened in 1888.
You've got mail.
And a general store the same year. By 1900, the town was at its peak. The newspaper? The Bison Bee. They had a bank, a telephone company, and the usual small-town shenanigans. You know, peak Kansas boomtown energy. To piggyback off of the last town's bragging rights, Rush County's first gas well was actually drilled at Bison's northern edge in 1903. So yes, people from Bison can actually bring that up at family reunions with people from the more successful neighboring towns. After that, though, the resume gets thinner. The elementary school built in 1937 is long closed. In the 1960s, Bison schools unified with Otis, and the population here has slid faster than both Otis and Crosse. Now on to the only sizable city within Rush County. Welcome to Crosse, people.
You've got mail.
Here it is, the grand finale. Still home to over 1,000 people, for now. Honestly, it's the only place in Rush County that still looks awake. Founded by the Missouri Pacific Railroad in 1876, it promptly stole the county seat from Rush Center 4 miles south. And yes, the name comes from La Crosse, Wisconsin, as the land originally belonged to a surveyor from there. They started developing the land in 1874. Lots were sold mostly to younger men. In 1877, the first school went up, then the first church. Soon after, the Walnut Valley Standard newspaper moved here from Rush Center, followed by the Rush County Progress. And in 1881, a third newspaper launched, the La Crosse Chieftain, because apparently 3 newspapers for 800 people back then was normal. The courthouse was finished in 1888 after the feud with Rush Center, and today, it's on the National Register of Historic Places. La Crosse quickly became the center of whatever economic activity existed in Rush County. Wheat, livestock, poultry, dairy, oil and gas. Not much else. By 1910, roughly 100 businesses operated here. 2 banks, 3 hotels, 2 grain elevators, an opera house, bigger than Nekoma's but not quite Broadway, and a telegraph office. The city even ran its own electricity, which was plenty for the 800 folks in town. Population peaked in 1950 at 1,769, but since then the population has slid, as today it's down to 1,266. Will it dip under 1,000? Probably. I mean, ask yourself, why would someone move here? Cheap housing and low costs are nice, but the trade-off is isolation. Lots of people say they want that lifestyle, but it's kind of funny to me how they're not stampeding to places like La Crosse, Bison, Otis, or if you're really allergic to having neighbors, why not Nekoma? You know what I mean? Nobody's doing it. The population in not only Rush County but nearly every rural Kansas county continues to show a steep decline, so much so that many towns are getting desperate and some of them are even offering outsiders cash to move in to keep their towns alive. Anyway, still, La Crosse does what it can. On the south edge of town you have a mini little village of museums. The Kansas Barbed Wire Museum is the town's whole identity now. Barbed wire wasn't invented here, they just collected it better than anyone else. In 1967, a group set up a swap and sell in La Crosse featuring barbed wire. It was successful, the momentum built, and a museum opened in 1970. By 1990, they had outgrown the original digs and built a new building on the south edge of town. I guess if you can't grow population, grow barbed wire exhibits instead. Earlier in the video I mentioned the original Nekoma State Bank building and the Timken Santa Fe Depot both have been rescued to this museum row. You also have what's called the Post-Rock Museum, which is built from native stone, so yeah, it's a small cluster of buildings that together looks pretty neat. You've got to be a real hater to say otherwise. Well, people, It is now that time. What did we learn in this video? We learned that you can't always trust Google Maps, just like how you can't always trust the next smartphone app, but you can always trust Chris's livability score.
Education.
LaCrosse High School has an overall score of 26 out of 100 on US News. That's terrible, but further investigation shows that the data was not collected for math scores on the SATs, so it just shows 0. So yeah, while US News is usually a dependable site for school rankings, not this time. The other categories show that LaSalle High School students score slightly above the state averages in both reading and science. The other school in this county, Otis Bison Junior-Senior High School, similar results. What I can tell you though is that resources will be extremely limited, especially at Otis Bison Junior-Senior High School. Education gets a 6 out of 20.
Crime.
LaCrosse is the only city large enough to measure any sort of crime data, and it's below average in both violence and property crime, so crime gets a 20 out of 20.
Downtown.
LaCrosse is the only city in the county with any sort of downtown to be proud of. Represent, but even it is lacking in showing signs of life. I'm probably being generous when I say this, but maybe half of the space in downtown LaCrosse is occupied? No other city in Rush County has anything to really show for in their downtown, so downtown gets a 3 out of 20.
Economy.
Look, we already know what it is, but let's break it down a little bit anyway. There's the helium plant in Otis, so that's good for that little burg. I'm guessing people from LaCrosse commute to work there, but the median age for a Rush County citizen is 46. With a population of less than 3,000 these days, there's probably only 1,000 people in the county that work. Maybe even less than that. The median household income is about $18,000 per year less than the national average, but at the same time, $60,000 per year gets you much further in Rush County than it does in Silicon Valley. Look, there's little to no chance that there will be an economic boom in Rush County in the foreseeable future, and it's very unlikely that the population won't continue to decline here. Economy gets a 2 out of 20.
Environment.
Well, there's the oil and gas drilling that's gone on throughout the county, and then there's the farming, but otherwise, it's not Chernobyl, it's not Gary, Indiana. The environment here is clean. Nothing really to worry about with pollutants, it's just dry and dusty, there's little to no water, and at the same time, the weather has more extreme mood swings than a corrupt police chief. It gets a 15 out of 20.
Recreation.
You have to drive far. You have to drive very far to get anything that represents much more than a city park. You have the Rush County Fairgrounds, you have the Warren Stone Memorial Lake Park, just east of LaCrosse, which by the way has some bad reviews from some locals on Google, which of course is due to the overall dry climate. It's the Great Plains. There's nothing for miles. The best thing about this place is that 350 miles due west is Pikes Peak, which is a 6.5 hour drive. Recreation gets a 1 out of 20.
History.
Not much notable things have happened here in good old Rush County over the years, to be quite honest. The coolest thing about the history of Rush County would be that some of the communities towards the north and northeast happened to randomly be settled by Russian immigrants. That's pretty unique for this area. And although many of the old church buildings in these towns are no longer being used for regular services, they still look cool. The old school building in Alexander looks cool as well, and LaCrosse looks like it could be on the set for an old western maybe. Otherwise, history is lacking. It gets a 4 out of 20.
Amenities.
I don't know, I didn't really see any amenities in my stroll throughout the county. What say you? 1 out of 20.
Cost of living.
The median value of a home in Rush County is $79,000, but the problem is, where are you going to work? I feel like if the work from home movement was going to have an effect on bringing some life back to these isolated places like Rush County, it already would have done so. We're going on 5 years now past the madness of 2020. You'll definitely need to use Starlink for your internet if you choose to live here and work from home. A quick look on Zillow, and I did click on most of the listings within the town, shows half a dozen move-in ready homes under $100,000. Some of them are small and could use some modern touches, but still, they're move-in ready homes, and I feel like the higher listings won't get what they're asking for. Cost of living gets 20 out of 20. All in all, the Chris livability score for Rush County, Kansas is 72 out of 180, putting it in last place out of all of the places that I've done this for in Kansas so far. Not quite last when you compare it to all of the places that I've been throughout the country, though. Look, there's nothing here. That kind of makes it unlivable. As much as Americans like to complain about people and how much they hate them, if you go by the whole actions versus words model, people love being around other people. I mean, they can't stop moving to larger metro areas for access to better resources, better jobs, better entertainment options, better amenities. I mean, I'm sure that the people in Rush County are great people and treat people with all the kindness and friendliness in the world. But great people are found everywhere. You know, how nice the people are isn't a category on the Chris livability score, nor is it on any of these other dumb websites like Area Vibes, nor is it ever going to be. That being said, here's a video that I made on some rural towns that surround Sedgwick County. If you're not from Kansas, that's where Wichita is. Those places are places that people are much more likely to move to in the foreseeable future than anywhere here in Rush County. I even interviewed a local postmaster in that video, so it's a great video. Go watch it. Thanks. We'll see you next time. Peace.